All right, in this segment, we're going to work on translating verbal expressions into algebraic expressions. A couple of key things I want you to think about before we get started here is whenever you're talking about translating verbal into algebra, you want to read it 2 or 3 times before you even consider answering it. So you want to make sure, number one, you want to read it 2 or 3 times first. Read it more if you need to, but you want to read it, try to pronounce keywords, underline keywords, things like that. After that, you want to feel free to mark up your paper. You want to circle keywords or even underline keywords. Mark up your paper with things that you think are important. You can put parentheses around something if you need to. Identify key terms in there. Read it several times so you can get the correct order of the sentence. All right. Now, what I thought we'd do first is a couple of key things here. If you're talking about addition, all right, some key phrases that might mean some addition. If you see the words, of course, added to, that would mean we're going to do some addition, right? 5 added to 10. We're obviously going to add 5 plus 10. All right. What about the word more than? The words more than. Anytime you see the words more than, those indicate that we want to do some addition. You know, what is 6 more than 8? All right, so we're going to want to do 6 plus 8. We have the terms sum of. If you see sum of, anytime you see those words, you're going to think automatically we're going to be doing some addition. We also have increased by. For example, what is 10 increased by 15? We want to think, hey, we're going to do 10 plus 15. A couple more here. We have a total of. Anytime you see the words total of in a verbal expression, you're going to think, again, I want to do some addition. What is the total of $5 and $20? And the last one is probably the most obvious for addition, is that the word plus, of course. What is 9 plus 4? You're obviously going to do 9 plus 4 and get 13. All these phrases are phrases that are going to indicate that you're going to want to be doing some addition in a verbal expression. All right? Some of them you probably have some experience with. Some of them you might want to read through and just make sure you understand that you're doing addition. All right. How about some subtraction? So some keywords for subtraction would be the obvious one, of course, is minus. You know, what is 8 minus 5? Obviously, we're going to subtract 5 from 8 there. How about decreased by? That would be another expression that would indicate subtraction. What is 20 decreased by 12? We're going to do 20 minus 12 and get 8. Or difference between is another common way to say it. You know, what is the difference between 15 and negative 8? You're going to do 15 minus negative 8. Now, these last two here, we need to talk about. First of all, how about the number, the phrase less than? What is 8 less than 12? You got to remember that if you say an expression like that, if I say 8 less than 12, you're talking about if I have $8 or, you know, 8 less than 12, I want to start with 12 and subtract 8. So this is an expression where you're going to have to subtract reverse. You're going to say, hey, this is the same as 12 minus 8, which would be 4. So if you see the words less than, you got to think you're going to do your second number minus your first number. Your second number minus your first number. If you see those words less than, that's why you want to read it 2 or 3 times so you can get that to yourself that you're saying less than, and I want to start with the second term minus the first. Also, the same meaning as less than would be the words subtracted from. You know, what is 12 subtracted from 17? So again, you'd want to start with 17 and subtract 12. So these two, again, do indicate subtraction, but you'd have to be careful here because, again, you'd want to do the second number minus your first number. Okay? All the other ones, these 3 guys right here, minus, decreased by, and difference between, you're going to want to subtract them in the order you see them. All right? Your first term minus your second term. All right, so that was some subtraction. How about a little multiplication? All right, so if you wanted to talk about some words that indicate multiplication. Obviously, we have times. That's an obvious one. What is 8 times 5? you get 40. A key one here is the word of. A lot of times when you see the word of, the majority of the time when you see the word of, you're going to think multiplication. For example, if you ask yourself, what's a half of 10? All right, you're going to think, well, that's a half times 10, so that would be 5. So anytime you see that word of, you want to think multiplication. You could also have product of multiplied by. You know, what is 2 multiplied by 6? You're obviously going to multiply there. And also the word twice. Anytime you see the word twice in an expression, it indicates multiplication. What is twice the number 5? You're going to think 2 times 5, right? So anytime you see that word, you're going to think multiplication. Division. Obviously, you're going to start with divided by. Quotient of. Remember, the answer to any division problem is always called a quotient. So if somebody asked you to find the quotient of, 20 and 10, you're obviously going to do 20 divided by 10. So you want to think quotient of. Another common one that's used a little less frequently, but that means division, is ratio of. Find the ratio of 20 and 5. Ratio is just a fancy word for division, so we'd want to think 20 divided by 5 there as well. And the last little thing we need to worry about translating is some words that mean you're going to use a power. If you're asked to find the square of, what if you're asked to find the square of 4? You're going to think, hey, that's going to be 4 squared. 4 times itself, 4 times 4 would be 16. And the other common power one is if you're asked to find the cube of a number. If somebody asked you to find the cube of 2, you want to think, hey, that means 2 times itself 3 times, right? All right, so all those were words that, or expressions that you want to, how do you want to say, get familiar with. Be sure you read them. Again, read them 2 or 3 times, underline them, mark them, and make sure you know them. All right, I have a couple problems for us to work here. We want to translate these into variable expressions. First one we have here is we have in quotations, we have the total of 5 times B and C, all right? So again, we got to read it again. We got the total of 5 times B and C. So the big idea here is we want to find the total of something, right? So you might want to underline that and say, hey, we're finding the total of something. What are we finding the total of? We're finding the total of 5 times B and C, right? So how would we write 5 times B? You can start by saying that's 5 times B. And then and C, and is where your plus sign would go here. So you could leave it as 5 times B plus C, or some people might write, instead of 5 times B, they might say, hey, that's the same as 5B plus C, all right? So again, I've translated this verbal expression, and you always want to read it again to make sure you got it. We got the total of. Total of means addition. We got the total of 5 times B, which we have here, and C, which we have there. Okay, but we circle keywords and read it several times. Our second example here, we have the quotient of 8 less than n and 14. So if we read it again, it starts with the quotient of, which again indicates, well, we're going to be talking about some division. You can do division several ways, but I would recommend when you do a division, let's think fraction, all right? If we're thinking the quotient of, and then quotient of what? We have 8 less than n. That'll be our numerator of the term what we're going to be dividing into. 8 less than n indicates subtraction. Remember, since it says less than, we want to start with our second term minus our first term. So 8 less than n will be written as n minus 8. And 14, so the number 14 is just going to be down there. All right, so you want to think again, quotient of was our big picture. Want to underline it or circle it. Got a division, 8 less than n, so we're going to start with n and subtract 8. And then 14 is just going to be your denominator. That's when you're dividing by. All right, so that concludes our talk about translating verbal expressions into algebraic expressions. Our next segment will deal with the laws of exponents.